Saints TV Weekly. End of the year. Let's do it. Alright, so first things first. Did get coffee ordered from a local cafe. So support your local business. It's very important to start this episode. But of course, seeing as the season's done, we've got to drink out of the Saints mug. We can't not do that. It wouldn't feel right, would it? So let's just get this in there. I'll listen to that. To be honest, it doesn't look that good pouring in, but I'm sure it's going to taste great. Bang. Beautiful. All right. Let's get straight into the weekend. Yeah, that goes down pretty well. All right, so leading up to the weekend's game, we took on Fremantle, 12:15 Sunday in Tassie at Blundstone Arena to be exact. And in the lead up to the game, we lost Max King for the season, adductor, no chance risking him. Obviously, Darragh Joyce was out as well, concussed after the Tom Hawkins tackle that Tom Hawkins didn't cop a suspension. Don't know how that happened, but it's Tom Hawkins. He gets off everything, so it's probably how it happened, to be honest. And then we just didn't risk Highmore, didn't risk Clark. We kept them on ice, and we brought in some players that were given a chance. In terms of the selection, the exciting part of that was Jack Bartel getting his chance. Everyone has wanted him to get a chance, and he finally got it. We'll talk about how he went in the game shortly. The other ends, Paul Hunter and Ben Long. In terms of the outs, Ryan Burns was omitted, and that was a bit of a surprise for me, but I have a feeling that he was just being rested. He's had a big year, and he's done really well in his first full year of AFL football. Darragh Joyce was obviously concussed, and Max King omitted or injured from the Geelong game with his adductor. And the last one that was a bit of a surprise was Luke Dunstan, omitted. And I have a few reasons as to why that probably happened. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the episode when we get into the trade news. In terms of the performance itself, that's how you end a year. I mean, it's bittersweet. I feel, God, that was so good, but also, why didn't you do that against Carlton and Adelaide and really any other game where you played shit? And we don't know. But our best is very good. And Fremantle had a lot to play for yesterday. They had a finals chance on the line. And in the end, Essendon won anyway. So it wouldn't have made a difference whether they had won or lost. But I think for us to finish on a high was really important. I wanted us to put in a good performance. And I tipped at three-quarter time that I'd love for us to kick over 100 points. In the end, we kicked 107. We kept them to, I think, 49. In the end, you do the math, that's a 58-point win. A great way to end the season. The key highlight, obviously, was Cooper Sharman kicking 4. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get the Rising Star nomination for round 23, which I think is great because we've drafted Connolly, Burns, Sharman, Highmore, Bartel. None of them have received Rising Star nominations. Cooper Sharman is probably going to be the only one we get this year. But it's a really, really promising sign from a really, really promising player. So to see him get 4, especially in the absence of Max King, was huge. Jack Bartel, as I mentioned before, he finished with 17 disposals. I think he had 10 tackles and he kicked 2 goals. So for him to come back and perform like that in the absence of Dunstan, who I think long-term he will replace, that's awesome. You know, to see him play a great game, to see Sharman play a great game without Max King. Even Ryan Burns, who was the emergency sub, he came on towards the end and had 6 or 7 disposals, and he went at 100% efficiency. So our youngsters are seriously good, and I think that's a big, big sign of things to come next year, is that if we can get rid of that inconsistency with a lot of the senior players, and they can find consistency along with the growth and the emergence of these young stars that we've got, we're going to be in a very good position to go forward in 2022 and hopefully to climb position after position and get back into the 8, maybe the top 6, maybe the top 4. Who knows? Let's get ambitious. In terms of AFLW, we're flying through this. It's been a big week, so there's a lot to get through, but we'll get straight into the AFLW news. I think it was really good. We've signed a new head of football, head of AFLW, and that is Tessie McManus. McManus holds over 2 decades worth of football experience across both the women's and men's competitions. She worked in the football operations department at the AFL for 18 years, serving as head of AFLW operations at Collingwood from 2018 to 2020. She's a well-credited leader, and I think it's a really good addition to our AFLW lineup. And it's really exciting times for AFLW. We've got a full suite of new teams. I think we've got a very exciting, probably the most exciting young team coming through. We did some good things last year. We had some disappointing losses, but I think overall with the core group really starting to get into their better years now, with Patricios and the G Train, these sort of players coming through. It's going to be a really exciting time for the club, and the season's not far away. So for us to lock this down, lock Tessie down in the coaching department is really, really important. And then along that, the AFLW have introduced 2 new rules for the upcoming season. One of them being the new stand on the mark rule, and we knew that that was going to happen because it happened in the AFL, and it took a few weeks to really get used to it. You know, it wasn't really a rule that sat well with me, so I'm going to be interested to see how strict they are in AFLW and whether they loosen up those rules later in the year, because I feel like in the first 5 or 6 weeks they were giving 50s left, right and centre, and then in the later part of the year didn't really notice it as much, you know. So it was just kind of, it was there early. There was a main focus, and as the umpires and the coaching and AFL coaches you know, adapt throughout the year, it just kind of wasn't a focus. And whether that was just everyone getting to terms with it, or whether it was the umpires becoming a bit more lenient, don't know. But I feel like it's going to be the same in the AFLW. It's going to take a few weeks to get really used to this stuff, and then by the end of the season we won't even know it's there. The second rule was a location of the mark at kick-ins. That's changed. The mark shall be set at 15 metres from the centre of the kickoff line towards the centre of the ground at kick-ins. This was previously set at 10 metres. Same with the AFL. I think they pushed that back to 15 as well. So they're only doing what they did in the AFL, which is great. It's consistent. Now we'll just take a quick interval while I have a sip of this delicious beverage. And we're back. So, VFL. Not really much going on in the VFL world, to be honest. Sandy's not playing finals, and they threw away the final round because of COVID and everything. They want to speed it up, similar to how the AFL's gotten rid of the pre-finals bye. The VFL have thrown out the last game of the year. I think Sandy finished around 13th or 14th. It wasn't a great year for Sandy. 13th, only 9 games played, 4 wins, 5 losses, at 94%. And I think, 8th was 7th, so 7 wins. So they were a fair way off, but I think their form was picking up towards the latter point of that season. Similar to the senior boys in the AFL, our form post-bye was better, and I think with the VFL the same thing happened, so it was good to see that the positive performances in the AFL was also being backed up with some decent performances in the VFL, but unfortunately Sandy not playing finals, that's all done, so that's pretty much, that wraps up the year for VFL, apart from when trades and players leaving becomes a factor, but at this stage VFL is pretty quiet for Sandringham. Now, for some big news. So this is the news that everyone is going to be focused on for the remainder of 2021, and that's going to be trade news, players leaving, retiring, re-signing, draft pick trades, all that stuff. That's going to be held here on Saints TV Weekly, so we'll keep you updated, and we'll talk about what Saints TV Weekly will become over the trade period and draft period as well. So the first one off the rank is Sean McKernan. He called time after 13 seasons. Sean McKernan played 91 games between Adelaide, Essendon and St Kilda. I think he only played 3 or 4 games for St Kilda, but he was brought in the off-season as obviously that sort of mature age depth. He's experienced, he's a big body, and he got a few games, and that was mainly to do with the lack of Max King in a forward line, or the ruck stocks being depleted, and that was when Marshall or Paddy Ryder weren't playing. And I think McKernan and Paul Hunter played together in the round 1 win against GWS, which was pretty amazing, with the fact that we didn't have any of our starting rucks and Max King didn't play, and we still beat GWS away from home in the first game of the year. I was there, and that was enormous. So I thank you, Sean McKernan, for his service. Obviously, it's a mixed bag with these sort of players, Paul Hunter, McKernan, and whether they were the right fits to get into the club. But nonetheless, he's had 13 years of AFL football across 3 clubs. He's had some decent games across those seasons. So congrats to him on a career, and all the best, mate, for whatever lies ahead of you post-football. The next one is a bit of a sad one, and I'm a bit surprised that the club and other players haven't really posted about it yet. I know a lot of players posted about Sean McKernan finishing up, but Jakey Carlisle, after 12 years, and the last 4 or 5 of those years being at the Saints, he hung up the boots, and it's a bit unfortunate for him because he's only 29 years old. You would have thought that if he was fully fit, he would be able to get games, whether it would be at St Kilda or at another club. But unfortunately, he's had some back problems, back surgery, and that's really just hampered his career. And I think it's put into perspective that he's got his partner Mel and his children Nash, Laker, and River, and you got to put those first when your health's not at risk, but it's just inconsistent. And he had some good football in the early years, but unfortunately the last couple of years, it's been hampered by injury, and I think it was the right decision. That's what I predicted. I think on the podcast the other week when I was asked about it, I thought that I'd be very surprised if Jake Carlisle would play on at St Kilda, and I think that other clubs would probably steer away from looking at getting him into the club because of his back problems, and there's no guarantee that he'll be able to play more than 3 or 4 games a year now, the way he's going. So I think he made the right call, family first, and again, everyone at Saints TV wish him, along with McKernan, all the best for their future. And I really do thank Jake Carlisle. I really did love getting him to the club, and I know he missed his first season because of everything that happened at Essendon, but I thought he was a really important player for us. And even in games last year when he played and we were struggling to defend, he stood up, and he was a very important part of why we played finals, I thought, last year. And the fact that we didn't get to see him play finals against Richmond was critical, and I think a reason why we struggled in that game. But he left for the right reasons, and that was family and the birth of a child. So, again, wish you all the best, Jakey. Thank you for your time at the club, and take care and get your back right, because you got to take care of your family now. That's the most important thing. Now for some re-signings, and this is really exciting. We re-signed the promising duo of Connolly and Cooper Sharman. They've re-signed for at least the next 2 seasons, and Jaron Geary and Mason Wood inked 1-year extensions. I think Mason Wood's a good one. We forget that his form was actually becoming pretty decent up until his injury setback. And Jaron Geary, well, I don't know. I'm a bit up in the air about the point of the 1-year extension. Comment your thoughts, guys. I'm not really sold on this. I think that Jack Steele's definitely proven that he can be the standalone captain in the future. So if Jaron Geary plays on, I really don't think he needs to be captain. Leave that to Steely. And my position on Jaron Geary is that he should have retired this year. And that's not because of, he's not going to get into he's not best 22 or he's not good enough. I do think he'll struggle to get into the best 22 because you've got Webster, Patton, Sinclair. They're all playing that small backline role. But at the same time, I think he'd be pretty valuable as sort of a coach on the sidelines and sitting with rats in a coach's box and giving a player's perspective on things, because we don't really have a recent player part of the coaching panel. I mean, Ruffy's there, but he's been out of the game for a couple of years, and to have, I think, Geary bring that insight would be really critical, and he's got a good relationship with everyone at the club, and particularly the players, because he's been the captain for the last 3 or 4 years. And I think it just takes up another position that we could allow to draft to, or maybe trade in another player that could be important for the next 3 or 4 years. But the club has made the decision, so I'll back them. I hope he does really well. Hope he gets his body right. And when he comes back, he doesn't have any other injury setbacks, because that's been the story for Jaron Geary the last 2 years. He's come back, he's played a couple of games, he's broken his leg, he's broken another bone, he's been out for 6 months, 6 weeks. it's a cycle with Geary, and we don't want him to come back and then have another injury. And while we all sit here and think, well, you probably should have called time, mate. You know, you should have called time, but you didn't. But it's a 1-year deal, so you'd think that this would definitely be his final year playing football. Now, for some trade news, obviously Luke Dunstan, I think, is pretty much packed his bags. The reason why I think that is that he was dropped was pretty much because he told the club, you know, thanks for the offer, but I'm gonna fish around. I'm gonna see what else is out there, and I think that he knows that he can get something. His form was pretty good when he came back, and he had over 26 disposals a number of times and supported Steele in the midfield really well. But at the end of the day, we've got Bytel, we've got a young midfield coming through, and he is replaceable. He's expendable, and I think that he knew that. He knows that he can get value. He can probably get better money somewhere else. And he's told the club that, and I think the club made the call. Well, Jack Bytel's going to be the straight replacement for you. We need to get games into him. And they brought him straight in, and he repaid the faith. So I think both parties are going to get what they want. We're going to get Jack Bytel playing a lot more senior football in the future. And I think Luke Dunstan's going to find himself at maybe a Gold Coast Suns or a team like that need another inside hard-nosed midfielder, and you'll get more money there. So that's the way it sits at the moment. Jack Billings, I hear, is potentially likely to re-sign. I think he might do it. And Seb Ross, based on his performance yesterday and based on his demeanour after the game and singing the song, he didn't look too happy. So he could well be gone too. And the other one is Jack Loney. I think he is ready to explore his options, and he knows that his time at the club is done. Now, in terms of players coming in, we've only really been linked to one player at the moment, but I think it's a pretty exciting one. It's a young swan by the name of Hayden McLean. McLean is 22 years old, and he's impressed upon his return to Sydney's lineup. He took a massive mark against North a couple of weeks ago, and he's got a lot of Marshall mannerisms about him, particularly the way he can go forward, take a big mark, and kick a long goal. He's very mobile, and I think he could support Marshall as well as Paddy Ryder next year. I don't think he'd cost a lot. I think he's uncontracted beyond this year. So Sydney is still trying to sort that out because they've got so many young players coming through that they need to re-sign, and they're going to have some salary cap problems very soon with the number of players they need to re-sign and the money that they will demand, because they're all very, very good and will warrant a fair pay rise. In terms of McLean, I think he's probably seen as expendable to Sydney. I think they can probably cover him, but I think he'd make a perfect replacement for Paddy Ryder moving forward. And you've got Max Heath there as well. But McLean, he's been exposed to AFL football. He can basically come straight in and support Marshall and relieve Paddy from the bulk of the work. Because I think in Paddy's last year, he will re-sign. He'll take the 1-year extension. And hopefully that won't mean that he'll have to be thrown into the deep end every week with Marshall. And if we can get someone like McLean in, I think that'll support him really well. In terms of anyone else that we've been linked to, there's still question marks over whether we might be looking at someone like a Scholl from Richmond. I know that he is a young ruck and very exciting, and he's got some X factor about him. And he's seen as gettable. I think that McLean is probably more what the club is looking for, and McLean's had ties to St Kilda before at Sandringham and trained with the club, I believe, a couple of years ago before Sydney picked him up. But yeah, he's another one that we're linked to as well. The other one might be Matt Crouch from Adelaide, and obviously there's a link there with Brad Crouch, so that could be something we'll keep tabs on. But if there's any more news coming through, we've got some sources at Saints TV. We will tap into that, and we will let you know as soon as we can. And yeah, that's pretty much the trade news at this stage. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Saints TV Weekly for this week, guys. Nice short and sharp episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I know that a lot of people are asking me questions about what content's going to be delivered. There's no match reviews, obviously, no match previews, no fan cams, none of that stuff. But Saints TV Weekly, in some capacity, will continue, whether it's in this format or I'll be doing some trade news and some trade talk videos, just to give everyone an update on where the club sits in terms of players leaving and in terms of players coming in. So Saints TV will cover all of that in some capacity. I'm still working through it, but at this stage, Saints TV Weekly will continue, and we've got the podcast coming up on Tuesday night for at least the next couple of weeks, and then we'll try and keep you updated throughout the trade period, throughout the podcast as well on there. So there's going to be a lot of content, guys, so stay tuned. Subscribe on YouTube, like the Facebook page, like Instagram. The Twitter account is there, Saints_TV, I believe it is. So the content is just going to be coming out non-stop. I'll be working hard on the channel, so you won't miss anything. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you have a great week. It was great to see the team finish off on a high, and that's the way you want to feel going into 2022. You want to feel optimistic, and you want to see signs of improvement, and you want to see some plays that are coming through that could really take us to the next level. And I think we saw that yesterday. So there's a lot to be excited about. Don't be upset that we're not playing finals. Just understand that I think that this year was a learning year, and we will learn from this. And 2022, I really think, is going to be a huge year for the club. A huge year for the club. So, yeah, again, thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll chat to you soon. Go, you mighty Sainers.